The other thing I find impossible is to estimate what I eat. I want to actually ask you about how you do it, because I think you're much more dialed into this. If I could tell you at the end of a day within 1,000 calories, not 1,000, I could probably do it within 1,000. There's no way I could tell you within a day 500 calories within what I've done. It's just not possible. I can't personally do it. I don't have that infrastructure. So I really believe that we've probably underestimated in the low fat craze how much fat didn't go down and how much low fat stuff did go up.
Well, think about going to a restaurant, right? And if you've ever been to a restaurant where they like go to the Cheesecake Factory, right? You look at the calories on the dishes. Yeah. You're like, how do you get that much in there? Well, carbs contribute to that, but the way you densify food is with fat. Like fat is what will take something from a 500 calorie dish to a 1,500 calorie dish. So I think when it comes to estimations.
Last night we were out and you were eating ad lib, but I know in your head the wheels were kind of telling you, like, at some point I think I even asked you and you made some comment like, yeah, I got about 600 more to go. Is that literally just repetitions? Like you've done enough food logging in your life that you can look at a brownie and you can look at a sandwich and you just sort of know what you're getting?
So I'll tell people, for some people, like that's not a sustainable way to live, to just like keep a running track in their head or whatnot. Because let me back up just a little bit higher level view. If you want to lose fat or control body weight, you have to practice some form of restriction. Now, you can pick the form of restriction you want. For me, the easiest thing for me is to be able to eat what I want within reason, right?
What you want, when you want, but just control the amount.
Bingo.
Yep.
Right? So if you do that, you're going to have to track calories or macros or whatever it is. Or you can restrict time, right? Or you can restrict a certain macronutrient group, or you know, you say, I'm just going to eat minimally processed food. So there's some form of restriction you have to do. Now, what's interesting is none of these forms of restriction seem to emerge as being better than another in terms of adherence across a population level. So it really does boil down to the individual. So I always say you have to practice some form of restriction, but choose the form of restriction that feels the least restrictive for you. So for me, that's just been tracking macros.
Did you play much with the others?
A little bit, yeah. Like, you know, kind of clean eating back in the early 2000s, which was, you know, minimally processed foods and, you know, high fiber and whatnot. And I actually found that I just ended up kind of I wouldn't say I developed binge eating disorder, but I did start kind of binge eating, because it was like if you look at the psychology of binge eating, it's really interesting. We had Professor Layne Norton on our podcast a while back, and his expertise is in eating disorders. And he said, really, there's two things that are kind of essential for an eating disorder to emerge. The first is, you know, some sort of poor body image perception, right? So that's kind of a prerequisite. Mm-hmm. The second is hard food rules. So when you create hard food rules, it just does a weird thing in your mind. So, for example,
I'm sorry, are both of those necessary or sufficient, or are they necessary and sufficient?
Both of those seem to predict. So when you look at the vast majority of people, I don't want to say every single person.
Yeah, sure.
But when you look at the vast majority of people who develop eating disorders, those are two things.
Those two things show up more often than, okay.
So what I found was that I would kind of take.
And sorry for my ignorance. Is binge eating defined as, because that obviously doesn't involve purging necessarily.
Right, correct.
Binging just means overeating. Like how do we technically define binging?
Yeah, I actually don't know the criteria.
Okay.
But from what Dr. Layne Norton said, it's kind of like periods of really intense food consumption followed by a lot of guilt, like feeling guilty, and with or without compensatory mechanisms, because sometimes people will exercise in response, some people will throw up in response.
Or deprivation would be another compensatory mechanism.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
And usually you're talking about, like, you're not talking about, oh yeah, I had an extra cookie. You're talking about like you ate the whole box of Oreos or whatever it is. So usually, I mean, I'm guessing, but it would probably be on the magnitude of like, over 1,000 calories at, a sitting unintended. And the other thing is it tends to be kind of it can be tied to stress as well. That's another part of it. But for me, I found that I would just kind of go, the bodybuilding magazine said I couldn't have sugar, can't have, this, can't have that. And the rules for what was clean seemed to be very arbitrary. But I was young and I didn't know any better. So I'm like, okay, well, I won't have these quote unquote bad foods. And the weirdest thing started happening. I actually started eating more of them because when I would get
more of the things you weren't supposed to.
Right. Because when I get exposed to it, I wasn't able to moderate it because it was like, I'm in college. Buddies bring home a pizza to the apartment. Hey, Layne, you want some? Sure. Or I would like try to avoid, and it would feel so bad that I'm trying to avoid. But the outcome was the same, which was I would just end up eating way more than I had intended to, or even felt hungry for. But it was like this mindset of, well, this is bad. I'm not going to eat this again. This will be my last time eating this because I'm going to be really serious after this. So since I've already broken the seal,
might as well just go all the way.
Might as well just go all the way, right? And so I just kept going through this, and finally I was kind of like, this seems to be really ineffective towards my goals. I wonder if it's the fact that I'm just, that I have pizza, or the fact that I'm eating like an entire large pizza to myself that's the problem. So at that point I was kind of like, well, let's just try this whole portion control thing and see if this works. And funny enough, I was able to modulate my body composition by eating foods I still enjoyed, but controlling portion size. And it was really interesting. I was supposed to debate, this is like 7-8 years ago. I was going to debate a bodybuilding coach at a seminar about clean eating versus flexible dieting, which is kind of what I practice, which is, tracking my macros and kind of treating it like a budget. And my opening argument, he ended up bowing out of the debate, but my opening argument was I had gone to his Facebook and looked at his cheat meals and had estimated the calories in his cheat meals in terms of a per week basis, and then put up what my calories were from, junk food on a per week basis. And was going to show that his was actually higher because in the concentrated amount he was taking in, he was actually taking in more calories from those foods. And so my point was going to be, so you're telling me it's really bad to have a cookie, but if I binge on it, it's okay, as long as I don't have it the rest of the week? Because that seems like a really odd metric.
I mean, my guess is that if we exposed everyone to all 3 different forms of restriction, you would have a rank order for any person of what's most effective, both biochemically and also psychologically. It's a min-max. You'd have to find an optimization. What fraction of the population do you think will do best, meaning they'll have the best physical response, and also just psychologically will have the best response to caloric restriction as a tool or flexible dieting? And I say this knowing there's no data, but asking you to think about clients and what percentage of people.
Yeah, I think, part of it is some people will be resistant at first and then actually really enjoy it later. Which I'm sure you've seen that with fasting as well, or low carb, those sorts of things. But it really just boils down to how willing is somebody to make this part of their lifestyle, right? So all of them have downsides, right? Like if you're on a ketogenic diet and you're going out, and I mean, there's a lot you can't eat, but you can usually make do most places. Might get some funny looks from your friends and family, but whatever. Time restricted feeding, hey, you want to go out and join us for breakfast? Can't. I'll sit and I'll drink some water. So there's downsides with flexible dieting. The downside is I've got to account for it, right? And so we know the data on reporting for food is like horrible. People underreport by like 50%, and it's pretty consistent in the studies. And people really take that as like an affront. So, well, I'm not a liar.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think that people are lying. I think people are just really horrible estimators of what they eat. Like if you ever want to be depressed, go weigh out a serving of cereal, or weigh out a serving of ice cream, or a serving of peanut butter. People, when they do these food recalls, I mean, a serving of ice cream is not a bowl of ice cream. Like a bowl of ice cream is probably 3 times more than a serving. in terms of what people are actually taking in. So it makes total sense as to why people underestimate their energy intake. And one of the things I'll say is, even if you don't land on flexible dieting as the tool that you want to use, tracking and weighing every single thing you put in your mouth for a week is an incredibly valuable tool, because it will teach you about portion control. And actually, you'll learn more about nutrition in that week than probably doing anything else, to be honest. Now, a lot of people don't want to do it because it's the same reason a lot of people don't want to keep a budget for their money, because they don't want to know where it's going, because then it's kind of like, here's the mirror and you have to look at yourself and say, ooh, where have I been spending my money? Right? Oh, I spent, $500 on Uber Eats last month, or, whatever it is. Well, then with, macro tracking, again, it's very much, oh man, I have had this so many times. People say, I'm eating 1,500 calories a day and can't lose weight. And
it's hard to believe you can't lose weight on 1,500 calories.
Now,
right?
there was I will say, there was a metabolic ward study where they put people on 1,500 calories, and there was actually one person who gained just a tiny amount of weight over I can't remember the time period, but the vast majority lost weight. Right.
I wonder what was going on with that one person.
Right. So maybe
endocrine issue or something like that.
Yeah. So I think the point that I would make is that I do think it's useful for people to try tracking for a while. I mean, again, we have people like, our app is different than a calorie tracking app, because it actually gives you, macros to eat based on your dietary preference and your goals. And then it will adjust them based on how you're progressing. So it's not just a one and done calculation. And a lot of people love that, but people who've never tracked before go, oh my God, I didn't know what I was eating. It has a barcode scanner and all that kind of stuff. So it's much easier. Like when I first started doing this, it was me going to the grocery store with the complete book of food counts and going, okay, where is it? Okay, there it is. But now, after having done this sort of stuff for, 20 years, like last night, picking up that brownie, I'm picking it up and I know what.
Yeah. What's the calculation? How did you do the calculation?
So all I do is I don't know what particular brownie that is.
Sure.
I don't know how they made it or anything like that. But it's likely that the calorie density is going to be similar to other brownies, right?
Yep.
The carb fat ratio might be a little bit different, but the calorie density is probably going to be pretty similar. So I really just try to think about, what do I think this weighs, right? And so last night I was kind of like, it's a little bit denser than a normal brownie. I put it at about 40 grams, right? And so I put that in. Now, did I
But hang on, you didn't put it into an app, did you? Didn't you?
Oh yeah.
You did?
I just put it in my app.
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I didn't
so
see that part.
but I just pulled up like some random brownie from Sara Lee or whatever.
Got it.
Right?
Got it.
So I'll kind of do that now.
Okay, I feel a bit better now. I literally thought you were doing this in your head the whole time.
Oh no.
I was like, God, how is he doing that?
So the apps now make it much easier.
But then the night before, when we were out at dinner 2 nights ago, I didn't see you putting anything in the app. And at a restaurant,
I did after.
But how? How did you remember what we ate? And how would you, like the bone marrow and all that crazy stuff we were eating?
So
how are you estimating all that stuff?
Yeah. So there was an entry for bone marrow that I found. Now, again, the point that I think I'll make is, it's very likely that some of these are inaccurate, right? But it's going to be more accurate than just kind of going, well, I have no idea, so I'm not going to worry about it. Right.
Do you think that the act of tracking it is what's putting a governor on it? In other words, do you think the fact that you had to enter 40 grams of brownie is what prevented you from having 3?
At this point, no, but for some people, absolutely. Right. And this is one of the most basic laws of science. When you monitor something, it changes.
Yeah.
Right. So I've done this so many times with people who have said the following, like, I'm eating 1,500 calories, can't lose fat. And I've said, listen, I don't expect you to do this forever, but for 1 week, just 1 week, everything you put in your mouth, weigh it on a scale and track it. Okay. And then come back to me and let's talk. One of two things happen. They go, oh my God, I was actually eating 2,800 calories. I go, well, welcome to freedom, because now you know that you're not broken, right? Like you're actually, like, you can modify, right? Or the other thing happens. They actually eat the amount of calories they said they were eating,
and
they
they're
lose
starving.
3 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah, it's what monitored is what gets changed. And we know that, like, right down on a particle basis, if you monitor it, it changes its behavior. So when you get people to monitor things, they change their behavior. It's like if somebody's like, oh, we're gonna do Layne's budget for the month, and we're gonna put it on YouTube as a video or something, right? Okay, well, like, all of a sudden we're like, oh, do I want to spend money on this? It's not gonna look good, like, when we monitor things, it changes. Yeah. But we know that about behavior, and we can use that to our advantage. So I think if I was getting ready for a bodybuilding show, for example, I would have to change how I do things. Like, I couldn't just, go out and just kind of guesstimate like that. I would have to get much more granular. And now the sacrifice might be, okay, maybe I'll still go out to eat, but I'm going to have to take all the ingredients, put them on my scale, and then track it.
Oh,
which sucks, but
no, I mean, look, if that's what you're doing, that's what you're doing. Like, that's the price you have to pay to get that good.
And then the sacrifice that if I want to do a bodybuilding show is, okay, well, I can't go out with my friends anymore. Right.
Yeah. Or at least in the final.
Yeah. And I would say, like, in the last 4 weeks, I'm pretty much a hermit. You know what I mean? But yeah, it's all these different forms of restriction are just tools. Right. But I do think having that accounting, looking through what you're actually having, is really educational for a lot of folks. And I would say to people who are listening or who are watching and have never done it, like, try to do it without judgment towards yourself.
Yeah.
Really without judgment, just be curious, and see, I wonder what this is. And I think what you'll find is, if you just enter it with that genuine curiosity, you'll find some things out that'll be really helpful for you. And you'll also learn so much about portion sizes that you'll go, whoa, yeah, I didn't realize that restaurants serve such massive portion sizes, right? Like, it's going to sound bad, but I can't tell you how many times I've been eating something and go, yeah, I'm good. I don't need any more.